Hello everyone, and welcome to one of our most important video screen captures that you'll be taking part in during this time of logistical learning, and it's about safety. Now, we've had a lot of different types of drills this year, including fire, tornado, external lockdown, and even now dealing with something new in the COVID-19. So what we're going to talk about here is mainly internal lockdown safety, which will discuss different tactics and things like run, hide, fight, what you should do in your classroom, some of those different things. These were all talked about and discussed with a team of administrators, ARCs, and the safety director from the district, John Davis. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Lisa or Jamie or Fred or Kyle or John. We were all in on the meeting together. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of these different things that we've talked about, and then there is some area where you need to do some reflecting on what it might look like in your classroom and how you would go about dealing with an internal lockdown. So as we've said before, we've dealt with many different types of drills this year, including fire, whether that's been intentional, the breaking of a sprinkler, something like that, or it's been a planned fire drill, which we've been doing. We've dealt with tornado drills, which we haven't, luckily, knock on wood, had any actual weather events where we've had to move students into a safety situation for weather outside. We have had some practice. We have practiced the external lockdown drill a couple of times. We've even put it into place when events happen near our building. And so just a reminder for the external lockdown, we are starting at the highest level. So we are clearing the hallways. We are keeping students and teachers in classrooms. I've been communicating over the PA system what's going on, that kind of thing. So we are starting with that. And if we need to kind of let up on that, we have. But we want to talk about today is internal lockdowns. And a word that some people are starting to think of is maybe the word lockout. So you may hear that as we move through this. But really, the internal lockdown idea is that there's something within your building. So it's already breached your outside doors. What do we need to do in terms of communication? What do we need to do in terms of hide, run, or fight? And that's your decision. Some of you may have been exposed to something called ALICE training, which teaches these same fundamentals. Run, hide, fight is actually just not the name brand version of it, which ALICE is. So this is what's been put forth by our district. All right. So the communication piece, like all of our drills, mainly comes over the PA, and you'll hear my voice doing that. If I'm out of the building, you will hear Lisa's voice. If you do have some situations where something's an immediate threat and you need to call 911, you do have to push 9 and then 911 to get to the outside line. If you're calling the main office, the extension is 7788, then push 1 and 6. You want to make sure that as things are going on, you're just being in tune with what's going on in your classroom. So you want to listen to your students, be aware of what they're talking about, be aware of what's going on around you. If there's a threat that can be contained, maybe it's just a clear the hallway sort of thing, where someone made it in the front entrance and we've got them in the office, so we may just clear the halls. If we don't know where that person is or we can't contain it, that's where we're going to make a decision of saying, you decide over the PA system, and then you have to decide, am I going to run? Am I going to hide? Am I going to fight? And that's what the piece that we have that comes at the end of this will kind of have you think through, as well as having some discussion time via Canvas with people in your part of the building. So you want to think about where you are in the building, where your nearest exits are, things like that. All right, so we're going to talk about run here initially. And that's the idea of, if it's safe for you to run, that's what you do. You don't need permission from anyone. You just get you and your students out of the building and as far away from the building as possible. And so the example might be, let's say the threat is on the west side of the building, coming in the west entrance on second floor main. You're an east wing person, you can leave. There's no concern about you running from that point. Leave everything that you have there. You want to make sure you have identified escape routes that you've talked about with your students so they're aware of where that situation is. At all costs, try not to take the elevator. Take others. Don't stay behind because someone says they're not going to go. That's their personal decision. And then when you get to a safe distance, call 911, and then let somebody know on the admin team, or Holly or Vicky or Jocelyn or Angie, whoever you can get a hold of within the building, to let them know where your location is. So what we want you to do, kind of as you start to think about these scenarios, is identify 2 possible escape routes from your classroom. And there's a Google form that I'm going to share here at the end, along with the link. And what we want you to do is start to think about how you can identify a scenario in which you could safely use your first route. What's a scenario that might help you choose that second route? So I'm thinking if I'm in the admin office on the second floor, I've got two real options. I can either go out the west entrance, so out my hall or out my office, down the hallways to the left and out. I can go to the right, down the stairs, out the southwest entrance. If I needed to, I could also go down the south side hallway all the way to the exit near Lyle and Kim's AD office. So you want to be thinking about where that might be in your room, depending on which part of the building you're in. And we're going to give you a chance to discuss this through Canvas with some other people in your part of the building. The next thing you may have to do is hide. So if you're not able to run, it's too close to you, the situation is you're not sure if you can make it out either one of your exits, you may need to hide. And this is something that we've all learned about, hiding your students away from the door, hiding them away from the windows, having some sort of way to cover the window in your door. You want to think about a place that maybe has a thick wall. The more walls between you and the problem, the better. Make sure you've got your door locked. You can barricade that. There are a lot of different ways to do this. It could be a chair. If you have the scissor type opening on the top, it could be placing a belt around it, something like that. You want to keep yourself away from the windows, your external windows as well as the internal window. You want to turn off your lights. Make sure that all kids have shut off their cell phones and their smartwatches. You also want to make sure that kids are not texting out what's going on, because if this is another student who's creating the problem, they may be receiving those group texts. So you want to make sure that students are aware of not making phone calls, not texting, not putting anything out on social media. You want to remain quiet, hide along the wall closest to the exit but out of view. Make sure you're not unlocking your door for anybody. That's a trick that's been used by school intruders, is to knock and say they're a student, and then when the door opens, there's an issue. Use strategies to silently communicate with the first responders out your window. John Davis has told us that there will be numbering on the doors and windows of our building probably over the summer. So we want to make sure that we know what number we are so we can communicate with first responders. And then make sure you stay where you're at until someone tells you it's safe to move on. It's one of those things that if you're not sure if it's safe, the law enforcement will be able to unlock your door. If they don't have keys, you may be able to call 911 to okay that with them. So here's a couple of things to think about again as we move through this that will be on the Google form. But what can you do to make your room a safe hiding place? So identify a scenario that would require you the option of hiding. What could you use to create a barricade? Are there any windows you would need to address? So again, if I'm thinking about the admin office on the second floor, if my office is maybe Anthony's office or Praveen's office, I have a different set of things to think about than if I'm Lisa, myself, or Jill. Being that Jill and I both have closets we could use. Lisa's a long ways away from the main entrance. So those kind of things. So think about in your classroom where you would need to go to do this hiding and possibly fighting, which is the next thing we're going to talk about. So if you can't run, if you can't hide, the last resort would be to confront the actual threat. You can do this in a multitude of ways. If you've been through previous training of this, a lot of times they talk about having something you can throw. I've talked to many educators that have things like buckets full of tennis balls, or that the kids all have something in their desk that they can throw at them that's a book, or it's something that can be thrown in terms of maybe some kind of ball or marbles or things like that. I know in my previous district when we did this, we had teachers who took old glass jars or plastic buckets and filled them up with everything from nails and screws to sand, different kinds of things that could be thrown to kind of stop that person from coming in. You could also use other things such as a fire extinguisher, say in the FCS kitchen, those kind of things. You can also do things like confront the active shooter and take action and save lives. Be clear, confronting the active shooter is a requirement. How you respond is you. So again, another thing that you'll be thinking about through the Google document or through this discussion through Canvas is what objects do you have in your room that would be helpful for you in a fight scenario? And then what's the scenario with that might be most needed to fight? What does that look like? The biggest thing is we want you to think about this as adults before we start to throw this out to kids, because we know that kids will follow adults, even if it's one of those things where you're saying, I don't know, these students don't listen to me at other times. Will they listen to me during an emergency? Yes, that's typically the response of students is they look to adults. So we want you to really think about what you're doing in terms of addressing these situations. So as I just talked about, planning to fail is failing to plan, and it causes issues. It causes a lot of time when we're running into what do we do in this situation? You don't have time to call an administrator. You don't have time to walk down the hall and ask your friend. You don't have time to go to your next door neighbor. What do you do? And so we want to think about these things that are going to show up in our building. And we hope they never do, but we want to be prepared in case it does happen. So we want you to think about, when would it be safe to run? Where is the best place for you to hide? What are the things that you have that can be distractive when you have to fight? And we want you to really plan that out. And so we're going to give you a chance to do that on Canvas through some discussion time with people in similar parts of the building to you. And so that's where it gets into these table talk scenarios. And this is that chance for you to share out with your colleagues, with the people that are next to you, the people that are across the hall. And you really want to fill out this form, the Google form, and tell us which hallway you're in so we can make the groups. And we may have an opportunity for you to talk through teams as well. But you might want to think about some of these things. There's an active shooter in your hallway. There's an active shooter that's the farthest from you. An angry parent is in the office. What do we do? We see these things all the time. We have issues where we have parents on campus because they're angry about something that's going on with a student or with a teacher. Sometimes other students will let them in, and they're in our building. So how do we deal with that as a teacher? How do we deal with that as an adult that's not the SRO, that's not an ARC? So that's where it comes up with that chance to talk with each other and figure out how we might handle some of these situations. So once we get back to school and we have the opportunity to have kind of thought through this as adults during this time off, and how do we share this with our students? So what do we do? How do we explain these with our students? We have students know the protocol for fire and tornado and those kind of things, but we want to make sure that we're talking with them. And so what we've done in this PowerPoint is we've given you some guiding questions that you may have conversations with your students around, especially during some home base time, or even just start the conversation within your classes about when should we run? When should we hide? When should we fight? And it'll be an interesting discussion for you as teachers to find out what students are thinking and where their minds go to immediately. And you'll have different students that think different things, and how do you get them kind of on the same page, especially understanding that they come from a multitude of backgrounds and experiences. So with that said, here are some things that are just some facts that we need you to know. You cannot cover your external windows. So if you have outside windows that face out to the street, the courtyard, wherever, you can't cover that because that's what allows us to communicate with the emergency responders. We handed out some yellow stickers for the phones. They had all the numbers. They were in your mailbox probably a month ago. Make sure when we get back to school that you have that sticker on your phone. Make sure you're keeping your phone on the hook. Don't have the busy signal on. Keep it plugged in. These are things that are really important for safety. When we go to make a phone call and it's a busy signal, or we go and it says this number can't be reached, those things have to be taken care of. You have to, as a teacher, be understanding that there will come a time when someone needs to get hold of you. So please keep your phones readily available. Review the emergency protocols that we've been sending out in the Tuesday Telegram. Make sure you have your fire and tornado drill poster up. If your PA system is not working, make sure you get a work ticket to Lyle or Kim when we get back to school. And then also make sure you have the Alertus app and School Connects app on your phone, because a lot of information will come out via that way. Here is John Davis's information. This is something you can pause if you do need to get a hold of John. He's a great resource. He's worked in public safety for a long time, and he's able to give us a lot of information. You may want to talk to one of the admin, like I said before, Fred, Kyle, Lisa, or myself, before you reach out to John. But if it's something that you think you want to address with him directly, feel free to do that. And then we do have some resources here for you on the last page: the district REMS plan, remember this emergency response plan, fire drill, and our tornado drill resources. So with that said, I'm just going to show you the Google Drive lockdown form. in a separate video that will come attached with this one. If you could please take the time to fill that out. Thank you.